another Paranormal Connections. I am your host, Christina George, and tonight we have another great guest. I know that we've been off with our shows for a couple weeks, lots of things going on. We have got a great lineup for the month on both this show, Aliens, UFOs, and Beyond, and the darker side of the paranormal. So make sure to check out our Facebook pages so that you can keep up on all of our interesting guests. I've got such a long list of very interesting guests this month. And as usual, Paranormal Connections Facebook page. Make sure to go and like the pages. So tonight, I got a very interesting guest, and I was actually contacted by him, but a lot of the listeners, I usually will put out on social media little things every once in a while about what people are wanting to hear about, what people are interested in. And recently I've been actually meeting a lot of people in the indie film community that are doing paranormal movies. And everybody remembers I had Christina Marie, who's locally here in Sacramento, and she had done the show, the movie The Star, and it's going to be coming out really soon. We're going to be doing a big event with them to promote it and do a private screening with people. And so tonight's very interesting as well because I'm going to have indie filmmaker and director Alan P. Jones. And he actually did a movie called The Haunting of Cell Block 11. And it's about a group of TV ghost hunters, very much like you and I, that listen to the show, that get in a little bit over their heads when they're investigating this haunted prison. And they actually shot the film at the infamously haunted Missouri State Penitentiary. So I know I actually myself, since I'm from California, have never investigated there, but I do know many people and many groups in that area that have. And so tonight we're going to talk to our guest about that, what made him think about, creating this movie. And it is a movie, so obviously there is a lot of fiction put into it. So we're going to be talking about that and also, what it's like in the investigation world, kind of why all this interest in the paranormal all of a sudden. Maybe our guest has an idea. So with that being said, Andrew, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So very interesting. And, I went to your guys' website, The Haunting of Cell Block 11, and I will tell you, on there's a preview of the movie. And when I put the promos out, I put them all across social media, across Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, everything you possibly think of. And we put those links. I went to the site and I was actually looking at the preview, and it really got me interested. A lot of people will talk about indie movies, and for some reason, the population thinks that they're like these, low-budget, B-rated movies. And I will tell you, looking at just the preview, was just like any movie that you would go to the movie theaters to watch right about now.
Well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, great quality, and definitely it was something I think that is going to pique the interest of a lot of the people in the paranormal field, because there are a lot of movies that are coming out right now that are quote unquote reality based, but yet there is again so much extra that is put in for, because it is a movie, that people are really getting interested in this field. And what actually got you into deciding to make a movie like this?
Well, it's a genre and a field that I've been interested in for a long time, really. I mean, I made some documentaries back in, like 98, 99 with some ghost hunters, and we went over to England and we did investigations. And that was a time when there weren't a lot of ghost shows on. That was way before Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, and I've always thought it was just a really interesting thing to do, to go into haunted places and try to contact spirits and to watch the teams as they do this. So the interest goes way back. And then, you're always, as a filmmaker, you're always looking for things to make movies about. And my last film was actually, 180 degrees opposite. It was a 1930s Depression-era drama, African-American drama called Kings of the Evening. And that came out back in 2010, and that was a much bigger movie. But the film industry has been changing a lot over the past 5 years, 10 years. And now with, the advent of all the digital technology, pretty much anybody is a filmmaker that has an iPhone and an editing program on their computer. And they've kind of flooded the market with low-budget films, indie films like you were talking about. The word indie has certainly changed over the years. But I've always strived to put out something of, quality. I've got 30 years in the business. I started in special effects, and, working as a writer and a director and an editor, I'm able to put all those skills to use, and I think I'm able to produce things at a little higher quality, I hope. So I think that's hopefully what you were responding to, because now you really do need to keep budgets super low if you're going to be competitive.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, it's absolutely not cheap to make a movie, even a very low-budget movie. People don't even understand, and to be absolutely honest, I didn't until I really kind of got into the film community, and I started having a lot of friends, locally that, are either actors or writers or directors and, things like that. And it was very interesting, how, they raise their money and to the indie film community itself seems to be very self-sufficient. I see that there is a lot of helping out each other. But I do think that you're right, that I think that right now it's so saturated. Like anybody and everybody's trying to create a movie, and so everybody's, wanting help with, the monetary side of it. And so, you are kind of coming out with stuff that, is a little bit lower budget. But I will tell you that just from what I saw, just the preview, amazing. I mean, it would be something exactly what I would see at the movies. And so,
thank you. And part of that is, just working with really good people over the years. When we, make a decision to go and make a low-budget movie, my theory going into this one, I mean, this really is micro-budget filmmaking. And after the last film and watching how the industry has been changing and how much more difficult it's become, I got up one day with my wife, who's actually an actress, and she was my producing partner on this, and we said, look, it's been a while since the last movie. I think we just need to do something. But let's dip our toe in the micro-budget arena and see what we can come up with. So the theory really was find some really fantastic actors, find an amazing location, which we did with Missouri State Penitentiary, and, write a fun script that's in a genre that typically sells and that people are interested in. So this was very kind of experimental, and it was very architectural almost in how we approached it and all the decisions that we made.
Okay, so now do you, come from a background where you've actually been out investigating, and so this is kind of like a passion and turn it into a movie type thing for you, or, just making the movies and learning about this? Is it kind of got you into the field, or how is it?
No, it's actually something that I've always been interested in, and even aside from filmmaking, I will go to haunted hotels, and I will ask to stay in the most haunted room because I do find it very interesting, and I approach it with a very healthy dose of skepticism, and, I'm not going to just assume that every bump is a ghost, but I'm also not going to assume that it isn't. And I've had a few experiences, and then my wife has had a few experiences, and she loves to do it with me as well. She's a little more spooked by it. So when I suggest we go to a haunted hotel, that's not always high on her list of enjoyable vacations, but she'll tag along and she'll do it. And yeah, and a lot of these places have ghost hunts and stuff, and we'll sign up for them and do it. And I don't know, it's just something that we really like. And it's funny that when we found the prison to shoot in, I didn't go out and look for a haunted location. It just happened to be something that they also do ghost tours, and it's just another side of that prison property is that it's known to be very haunted.
Wow. So, that was very similar at the beginning. I was talking about a local filmmaker here in Sacramento, Christina Marie, and she created actually a movie I guess it was for 48 hours, and she actually was making a film about, a group of investigators that, would go out there and they would encounter something that, they really couldn't understand, and it would, really kind of show the other side of how scary it can be being an investigator. So they actually went to a local hospital that was actually bankrupt, and so it wasn't, it's not that old, it hadn't been shut down, but of course, we know that with energy, there are a lot of places where a lot of death happens, that there's a lot of residual energy. And they actually got in there, and nobody other than the actual director of the film believed in any of this, of the paranormal. And what was funny is that when they got there, they actually all started experiencing all kinds of activity as well. And it freaked them out so much that they finished the film in a weekend. And that was how quick it was. Now, how long did it take you guys to film your film?
Well, we shot for a total of 13 days, which is, if anybody has ever worked on a film, that's really fast. Because what that means is you're shooting, on average, about 8 pages a day, and that's very hard to do. You got to figure on a very big budget, on a normal big budget movie, you're maybe shooting half a page or a page a day. So to shoot 8 pages, I think our heaviest day we shot 13 pages, and that's why I knew that, because every day is money. So that's why I knew we had to have some fantastic actors that could come in and just nail it. We didn't have time to do lots and lots of takes. So so we did the whole thing in 13 days, and half of that was in Missouri, the first half, which is actually the second half of the movie. And then we came back to Los Angeles and we shot for another week, and that was the first part of the movie.
And how amazing how, you can have all these different locations with all the editing and splicing and putting everything together, how, it'll look like, you did it all in one little sleepy town. One thing that was kind of interesting is that in the movie, it's a team of ghost hunters that goes in. Their ratings are terrible. The network boss, played by Dee Wallace, calls them in and says, "Look, you need, if you don't get your ratings up and produce better shows and get us some real paranormal activity, you're going to be canceled." So that sends them, to this haunted location, and this is kind of their last try. So they set up all the cameras. And one thing we had to do was, that's part of why we shot that first, was, typically when you set up all those security cameras on a ghost hunt that are capturing different areas of a property, and then you see it all on a computer screen readout. So I had to shoot all that stuff, come back, edit together the computer screen readout part of it, and then we had to construct a room that was kind of our control room that had to look like it was part of the prison. So that was kind of probably the trickiest part for us, where all the control room stuff was actually shot later back in Los Angeles. Wow. And again, people don't even understand the amount of behind-the-scenes work that has to be done for productions like this. It is to watch it actually unfold is beyond belief, because what you see if you're around when a film is being shot, and then that's why when they have the screening, and all the stars of, from the show go and watch it, they're just so taken back because they have no idea actually how it's all going to end up being put together and put out. I mean, they've got the script.
Right, and then the other thing, when you do see actors talking, doing the talk show circuits and all that, you have to realize that film was shot 2 years ago.
Right.
And people don't understand it, that they, they're out promoting the latest film like it was yesterday, but they've worked on probably 2 or 3 films since then. And it just takes so long, and especially on a low-budget film like we did, I had to do a lot of the work myself because I do have a background in editing and special effects, and so I came home and I started the editing process, and I actually scored the film, and I did all the effects on the film. So, because I'm one, typically you've got teams of people doing all those things at the same time. Right. But so post took me a little longer than I would have liked. But yeah, we shot the film we started shooting the film in December of 12, and then it just came out. And actually, it's very fast. I mean, if you think it, then it came out July 1st of 14. That's pretty darn fast. It's about 18 months.
Like how hard it was, even just as audio and putting it all together and making it look right, and just all the intricate details that have to be put in. So I mean, that's definitely a lot of work. But I mean, obviously, again, it shows the type of work that you put out when people see the end result. And again, I mean, I haven't seen the whole thing tonight after the show. I'm actually going to run it and watch the full thing, and I'm going to give everybody my opinion on it, my critique after I read it. So tonight, you guys can check out my Facebook, or tomorrow morning, check out the Paranormal Connections page as well. And we'll start a thread, and what we would like you guys to do is also go and check out the video. And how much is, for people wanting to know, how much is the video on demand? And it's actually available quite a few places, correct?
It is, and if people want to find it, they can go to hauntingofcellblock11.com, hauntingofcellblock11.com. And I've got a list there of just all the different cable stations, because it's not all of them. It's not on Time Warner, it's not on DirecTV, but it's on some really big ones. But also, more and more people are getting their on-demand content through Vudu and iTunes and Google Plus. And
the thing for me is, okay, I'm usually really, really busy. I don't have a lot of time. Even going to the movies, even if I go and I take my daughter with me or something, I mean, we're looking $40, $50 just walking in the door and getting something to drink and snack on. And, we're talking $4.99. You can, watch it on your computer, on your tablet, on your phone, on the go, wherever. And that was one of the things, is that it was available a lot of places and very accessible. And I think, in the movie era, do you think that this is kind of where it's going? There's so many movies being made.
Most definitely, yeah. Because I mean, if you look at how the distribution model is really changing. The whole paradigm of distribution has just really started to change because of digital distribution. So few films are released theatrically now, and most of them, I mean, now you see, movies with big name A-list stars in them that are going direct to VOD like we did. And I shot this film knowing I don't even want to mess with theatrical. Theatrical can just really be a big money pit. But I think we can just find our audience on demand, on video on demand, and more. That's the way content is being seen. My wife and I, we don't really go out to movies very often unless it's a screening. But honestly, I can't even remember the last time we went and bought a ticket to go and sit in a theater and watch something.
Right. Yeah, because now, with Redbox and, all of the video on demand and Roku and all these different things, Hulu, it makes it so easy. And not only, ones that don't go straight to the movie, a lot of times, people have to wait for, used to be months for it to come out, on the DVD.
On DVD, yeah.
They're literally a few weeks after it's released.
Everything is kind of spread out. There's different cycles you go through. Like right now, we're in that very first VOD cycle, and iVOD, and then that'll be all it's available on for a couple of months. And then the next one is the subscription VOD, which is like Netflix and Hulu and some of those. And then it goes to a third one, which I can't even remember what that is, and then it will come out on DVD. But all that happens, in a 6-month period now.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that for families nowadays, especially, say you've got family with children, it's like, really, do you want to pack up all the kids? Unless it's like a children's movie, obviously you're not going to pack all the little kids up and take them with you to the movies. And
no, right, the babysitter, and suddenly it's $100 night to go see a movie that generally probably won't even be very good, frankly.
Right, and I'll tell you, I am a horror movie buff. I always have been. Growing up with paranormal being part of my life, I'm sure had something to do with it. But on the other hand, I grew up in the era of creature features and things like that. So it tells my age, but it was a great time for horror movies. And now all of a sudden we're seeing this big influx of paranormal movies, things like that coming out. But they all seem like they're all, want to make people think that everything's demonic and everything's going to kill everybody. And, it really, we haven't seen any real movies that I've seen that really shows what we do as investigators and kind of what it's like. Because, so many people don't understand it. They again, take TV as, a guideline of how things work. And there are so many cases that teams go out, and especially if they don't have, like vomiting or something, and they're completely relying just on their electronics. They can sit, for all night long and absolutely get nothing, and
right.
The actual cases that you get where there's something really, really, bad that has the activity that you see on shows and movies and stuff is, quite rare. When you've been investigating over the years, I know you said you did have some personal experiences. What were they?
I have never seen anything, and that's one thing I get kind of jealous of people that can actually see things. And when I was making those documentaries back in '98, even then I was with the team, and I was very new to the process then. I just found it fascinating. But there were a couple times I would hear things or smell things. I remember being in a hotel room, and we were in England, and I'd waken up in the morning, getting ready to, just lying there for a minute, waking up and getting ready to pull it together and get out and start shooting. And I'm just laying there, and I hear right next to the bedside, I just hear 3 very loud taps, almost like a coin on a glass. And I look over, and I, for the life of me, couldn't figure out what that was. And then I went down to breakfast, and the paranormal team was there, and I said, this weird thing happened. And they had all picked up on a little girl that was running around that hotel, and then they also told me that things tended to happen in threes. So if you hear 3 taps, or so that was kind of the beginning of it. And then really nothing for many, many years. And then maybe about 6-7 years ago, I was in a hotel in, I think it was San Jose, and it was known to be a haunted hotel. And my girlfriend at the time, she and I were staying there. We were actually driving from Texas to California, and we sought out this hotel and got there. The first thing that happened when we got there was her phone rang, but there was nothing registering on it, no incoming call, no ID coming in. So we thought, well, okay, that's a little strange. Nothing else happened. We couldn't feel anything. Nothing was going on. We were kind of over the whole ghost part of it. We were down in the bar and having a couple drinks, finishing up. It was a karaoke night. That all finished up. The whole place was kind of emptied out. And we were the last ones there, and she said, I need to go use the restroom. I said, great, I'll just pay the bill while you're gone, and we'll go back up to the room. So I'm sitting there at the bar alone, signing the tab, and I feel her behind me grab my arm and tug on me, as if to say, come on, let's go. And I thought, gosh, let me just finish here. What's the big deal? So I finish signing, I turn around, there's nobody there. I thought, okay, well, that's very odd. So I thought, well, she's got to be here somewhere. I stepped outside to see if she had gone out to have a cigarette. She wasn't there. I looked back in because there was a big window, and now I see her where I was standing looking for me. Our eyes met, and I said, where did you go? She said, I went to the bathroom. I said, no, but just 2 seconds ago when you were pulling on me. She said, no, I just came back right now from the bathroom, and you were gone. You were outside. I still can't explain that one, and that's the one that that's the most hardcore experience I've ever had, and I cannot explain it, and it was unmistakable, that feeling of a hand on my arm tugging at me.
Mm-hmm. It's something very interesting, especially for people, even if people have an interest and that they're really, really just wanting to be able to have that experience that everybody else, does. It is a very powerful, feeling, and it's like it always stays with you. Like, you'll always remember that. And it's just like when you get skeptics, that will do not believe in this, and then all of a sudden they have their own personal experience, and that's what it takes, to really shake them, because then they actually then have some validity themselves. Of course, they think everybody else is crazy, but of course they could.
Well, and I mean, it's funny you say that, because I was having a conversation today with a very good friend of mine. He is the most hardcore skeptic anyone will ever meet. He just does not believe it. And any experience that anybody has, it's either in their mind to him, or they're just making it up just to play a trick on you, or they're crazy.
Right.
And there is no other explanation to him. And I said, well, okay, except I've had this happen to me. And my wife, who I'm married to now, she's had some experiences where she has seen some things. So what you're saying to me is you think we're either lying or we're crazy. And he looks at me and he's like, he's my friend. He can't say that. But he said, I've never had it happen to me. So until that happens, I'm going to be a skeptic.
Yeah, there you go. And I get it all the time. I mean, I tell the story over and over, but, even for me, when people meet me and, a friend of mine will introduce and say, oh, it's Christina George, she's a radio host and she's a paranormal investigator and a psychic. And they always, look at me so strange, with this, yeah, right, look. And, usually, about 99% of the time, the first question that they ever ask me is, oh, well, if you're a real psychic, what am I thinking right now? So I have to, point out that, I'm not a mind reader.
Right.
I also don't know the lottery numbers. I'm not going to tell them that their spouses are cheating on them, and they definitely don't have a curse. So, but I may be able to give you a message from somebody on the other side.
Right.
But, people have a lot of, misconceptions. And because, we have been told for so long, generation after generation after generation, that none of these, types of phenomena exist, once people start having their own experiences and they start seeing, actual, video evidence, things like that, it does start to make them question. And I think that it's almost good that we're at a place where we are, where people are starting to question, because I think that there's so much that, we don't know and we don't understand, that it's a very important thing. I mean, for many of us who have grown up, where paranormal, things were not abnormal. They were, everyday occurrences to us. We basically had to just learn how to adapt. And so now there's so much information. Now, when you went to go and film at the penitentiary, one of my questions is, did you get reporting from, any of the crew or the actors? Were they having actual activity or experiences when you were filming?
Yes, we did. And I did not personally, but I kind of attribute that to when you're a director on the set, you never have a free moment. You are so focused,
right.
At least for me. I am so focused. I'm 5 steps ahead of the moment. And I just don't have time to be open and to experience anything. I really just don't. But we were shooting, the penitentiary is made up of several different buildings. Different cell blocks that they built over the years, and it's a very old penitentiary. There was a time that it only was decommissioned back in, I think, 2004. And there was a time, it was, by the time it was decommissioned, it was the oldest operating penitentiary west of the Mississippi. So it goes back to the 1800s. I mean, it was a Civil War prison at a time. A lot of history there. So we were only shooting in one of the cell blocks. So just kind of geographically worked for me for the story, and we could keep everything confined, and we didn't have to walk all around to all these different buildings because everything was so fast. We used another one, which is the oldest one, as our base camp, and it has it's like a big warehouse. It's just a big open space with about 4 levels of cells on each side, and then a big open space in the middle. Well, we turned a lot of the bottom floor cells into dressing rooms for the actors because we didn't have a lot of money for trailers and all that. We thought, gosh, we got all this space here. Let's clean up the cots a little bit, sweep these out. It'll be kind of fun. Get them in the mood. String up some Christmas lights in there, and then we put a curtain on each one because because they have bars on them.
Right.
So we put a privacy curtain. Well, we were off shooting in our cell block that we used for shooting, and some of the production assistants were over in base camp just sitting there and, talking about what they needed to do and is their coffee made and all these things. There was about 3 of them sitting there, and all of a sudden, they all just saw one of the curtains fly up into the air, like someone just walked through it. And they all turned to each other, and said, Did you just see that? Yeah. Did you just see that? Yeah. There was no explanation. It wasn't like there was a breeze just in that one cell. There wasn't there's just no way to explain it. They all had the same curtains. They all had the same...
And they kind of already know what the goal's about, but, actually experiencing some stuff when you're actually shooting in a, known haunted location.
Yeah, they were a little spooked. I mean, they actually didn't like to spend much time in their dressing rooms. They preferred just to be around other people. And we would shoot a lot at night, and the place would get pretty creepy at night. And it's a large courtyard that separates the buildings. And sometimes if they had to make a walk from one building to another, and there was nobody else walking with them, they'd walk real fast because it's scary. There's also in that. But to answer your question, but it also, they kind of thrived on it. It sort of added to the ambiance and added to what we were doing, where they need to run around and be scared. They kind of genuinely were scared. And they did have some other experiences where they're around a corner, we're waiting to call action, the cameras are in one end, and they have to go in around a dark corner and wait for their cue. And they would get very uneasy, just feeling that there were things around and things watching them. But I think it did sort of just, it added to the whole experience for them. Some people also heard footsteps. In that same base camp building, there's a right in the middle of it, there's a little flight of stairs that goes down, and there is not one speck of light anywhere. Very scary place to be. And people would be down there for 10, 15, 20 years. They would let them out just for like an hour a day so their eyes could adjust. And they would go crazy down there. People many times heard footsteps going up and down those stairs.
I couldn't even imagine, being put in the pitch dark, for 23 hours a day or whatever, it'd be bad enough to just be locked up for 23 hours a day, but to be pitch black, where there's no interaction, there's nothing that you can visually see, so your mind could cause you to go crazy because it's, just kind of wandering. You can't really put
and it did. A lot of them, they did. They just went crazy. Some of them, would find ways to kill themselves, and it was a really horrible place. Now, another part where we actually did a lot of shooting was Death Row. And that was an area where I always felt uneasy. And I think it was before I even knew that it was Death Row. I just always felt very dark and very uneasy in this one stretch. And then I found out that, okay, that's Death Row. Many people just don't feel good down in that area. They just feel this real heaviness and real sadness. Obviously, it's Death Row. There's got to be a ton of just negative energy down there trapped in those walls and those cells, and it's a very depressing place to be. And that was the only place that we shot down there because it's great and it's beautiful, but yeah, not one of my favorite places to be. And it's an area where they capture a lot of activity when they do their ghost hunts.
Well, were you guys able to capture anything on film when you were... No,
No, and believe me, I when I was editing, I would go through a lot of the footage and listen to a lot of the audio, kind of hoping that I would capture something, just a little bonus. Because hey, it would have been great for the for the DVD, little bonus feature on the DVD. But no, we didn't. There was one area where there was. Interesting thing about the prison is that the state controls it, even though the tours and all that are run by Jefferson City, Missouri. The state actually controls the prison, tells them which parts they can go into and which parts they're not allowed to go into.
Right.
They can't even get into certain parts because they don't even have the keys to it. So there was a lot of areas that were closed off to us, but we could see through these big walls of bars. And there was this one wall of bars that would separate one cell block from another cell block. And there was a door that was a maintenance door that would go into where all the plumbing was between the cells. And one of their paranormal investigators, who was with us most of the time, looked over, and suddenly this door is open. And I asked him, I said, is that unusual? He said, that door has never been open, and they don't have any access to that area. And it's a big, heavy metal door. And they had no access. I mean, even if they wanted to get in there, they couldn't. And suddenly this door is open. And there was just no explanation for that. And they thought that was very interesting, too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because you would expect that, even, like I've been to Alcatraz and different prisons, and, just opening of any of those doors in prisons, it like echoes, it's very loud. I mean, you would definitely be able to hear something, if it was being opened or, and again, nobody has access. How does somebody even get in there to be able to open that door? And you guys just happen to, be looking there and realize it's open.
And a lot of those doors were actually like painted shut from just years and years of paint being slapped on there because we had, a mirror image in the area where we were working, and I went up to that door. I couldn't even open it. These things are so heavy and have so many layers of paint on them that how that door was open, I'll never know. But the ghost hunting team that kind of runs the ghost hunts at that prison, they were fascinated by it.
Wow. So even with all the years that they've been doing ghost tours there, like nobody ever.
They could not explain it, and I think when something new happens, when you do it so many times and you do it night after night, when something new happens, it's exciting even for them.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. I mean, especially something like that. I mean, it is interesting though that they're only allowing people certain areas. Where it makes you wonder: is there a reason why they don't want people in these other areas? Has there been history of things happening in those areas? So they just want to shut it down to anybody because a lot of times like people when they go on these tours or stuff like that, they do sign waivers ahead of time, before they go on the tour. So if something does happen or something falls.
Oh yeah, every time I went to Scout, every single time I had to sign a waiver before I'd go inside. Yeah.
And most places will make you, where you can't even go into their location. But there are some places that are, known that people, get hurt and thrown down and such. I know that like Bobby Mackey's is one place that is well known for, stuff like that. Talking to the people who give the ghost tours, I mean, in areas that they're doing the tours, did they give you any information of, maybe different things that they had experienced, or had anybody ever been, attacked or pushed down or hurt or in any way?
Yeah, they have some of the entities they have names for. For instance, there is the running man, because they hear in one of the catwalks, the cell blocks are all metal, and they have these, kind of metal catwalks that you have to go up these stairs, and it's all very loud. But they have this thing called the running man, because they hear it just running on the catwalks when nobody else is in the building, and they'll hear this thing just making laps up there. In the one that we used as a base camp, they've had tours in there where people have run out and refused to go back in. One woman, as I recall the story, one woman looked up and saw this entity looking down, and it had no eyes. And the story, it turned out, was that there was a prisoner that was killed up right where they saw that entity. Years ago when it was an operating prison, there was a prisoner that was killed and they gouged his eyes out. And so it was very interesting that the woman who saw that saw this, very horrible visage of this thing up there with no eyes. And it was a very violent prison. The history, it's called the bloodiest 47 acres. That was one of its nicknames. There were a lot of deaths there, a lot of murders, a lot of prisoners killing themselves, just a lot of natural deaths. There's even a rumor that down near the gas chamber, which in that area way down there is now a parking lot. It used to be the recreation field, but there's a rumor that there's a lot of bodies buried under there, that there's a mass grave under there, because many, many, many years ago there was a cholera outbreak or something happened. I don't remember exactly, but they had a mass grave, and there's some rumors that mass grave is still there underneath what is now the parking lot.
I mean, and that actually would make a lot of sense because, since that is such an old penitentiary, back a long time ago, if they had too many, bodies, they would usually have, an area to bury them, close by.
Yeah.
And, of course, fast forward now over this time now, and it's not using the area, why not, now you need a parking lot. They've done that to a lot of even American Indian, burial sites and things like that, where, or regular old cemeteries where they're so old that there are no living relatives that come to visit anymore, so they basically just pile it all over and start building, subdivisions or whatever. It wouldn't be unheard of, but just it being a prison, like you said. The amount of, outbreaks of fights and murders and, between not only the inmates, but the inmates and the guards, people trying to riot, all those different kinds of things. Definitely working out of prison is a whole other, situation. But, with so much, you've got people who are basically caged up and locked up, and so all of that testosterone, frustration, anger.
And it's kind of like hospitals. Why are hospitals so active? Because there's so much emotional stuff that's going on in those places, and prisons and hospitals and asylums, and they're big, scary places. So sometimes you could ask, all right, is it our imagination that's projecting it on this place because it's a big, scary hospital, or is it active because it was a hospital? There's a lot of emotional things trapped in there. A lot of emotional people dying and grieving, and gosh, where else would you find entities trapped?
Yeah. Well, again, being a psychic, going into the hospital is, like my worst, nightmare, because, you never get any rest anyway being in the hospital, but then you've got things wandering in and out all the time, this stuff. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that, we do see a lot of people who are now, paying exorbitant amounts of money to, go and investigate all these haunted locations. And it always kind of makes me laugh a little bit, because being able to see spirits, they're everywhere. Everywhere. It's like,
right.
Living in New York, during rush hour, and, people spending all this money, they could go, to the pharmacy, they could go to, the car wash, because everything, was something before, and
right.
You can get stuff all over the place, and, I'm one of those people, I like to look at the stranger areas where people would never expect, that you would get something, but, how do you feel as far as being an investigator? And we were seeing this change of, I know when I was investigating businesses, they would want us to come in and validate that they weren't crazy, that there was actual activity, and they wanted us to get rid of it. But now we're seeing businesses wanting us to come out and validate, but not to get rid of the activity. They just want it so they can validate it and now start charging teams and groups and stuff to come and make an extra profit. Being an investigator, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's interesting, because I'm hearing that now more and more from people as I reach out and do research on other projects. And I've got a show that I think is fantastic, and unfortunately, paranormal shows are not very popular with networks. They just don't want it. They just think there's too many of them, and they're kind of over it. So, and frankly, I've been pitching paranormal shows since before there were ever any paranormal shows on the air. Pitching psychic and paranormals, and it wasn't popular at that time, and everybody told me no and looked at me like I was crazy. But now it is so popular, and now I think businesses have gotten very, very savvy to the fact that, hey, this could be a great little side business. If this place is haunted, we can advertise it as being haunted, and all these groups will now want to come in, but now we're going to charge the group to come in.
Mm-hmm.
It's become an industry, which is really, really interesting. Now, I mean, my question for you, being in this field for so long, is have you seen a huge explosion of paranormal groups since the TV shows have been on in the past, 5 years?
No, 100%. And, unfortunately, the problem, too, is that there is no, per se, training to become a paranormal investigator. So people are using these reality shows that are on TV, which people, again, don't understand that even though they're put out there as reality shows, TV shows, they're still for entertainment, and there still is a lot of stuff that, is, they do a few takes, they want to get different, expressions, different things. So people, don't know that, so they just think it is, oh, this is how it goes. So they're actually using, these shows as training tools, which to me is very alarming because there are so many different types of, investigating out there. And, there's very well-known ones out there, we won't mention any names, but that like to provoke. And so you get, somebody young, they, see this, a TV star, out there provoking and calling out these spirits, and, they go out there and they decide, well, that's the way they do it on there, that's what we should do here. And next thing they know, they're dealing with something, they wish they never would have hoped.
It's really interesting that you say that because, I've never heard that theory before, but you're right. The TV shows have become their training ground, and that's the way I feel about the film industry now, too, is that because of digital technology, people's training ground is just watching a movie. There's no more working on set, learning the craft, working under somebody to learn the craft, and apprenticing, and being an assistant for a while. Now you just watch a movie. Oh, I can do that. I can go get a camera for $1,000, just like I can go get a EMF meter, real easy, and I can go do that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, this has also spawned another, some other things, even underneath that. Because now, okay, again, at the beginning, psychics, nobody really wanted to ever claim that they were a psychic. They would say that, they did have some abilities, don't really know what, but they didn't want the whole title as a psychic. And plus, you never really heard of anybody that was a demonologist, other than really like Ed and Lorraine Warren and, a couple others. It was something that was left to priests and, people who did exorcisms, things like that, and so it wasn't something that most people would dabble in. But I've seen an explosion of people now, saying that they're demonologists. And the crazy thing about this is that now people are saying, oh, yes, that is true, that people are learning off of TV. They're, enthusiasts, paranormal enthusiasts, and so they decide to, get in this field and they have no clue what they're doing. So since they have no idea what they're doing, well, let's take advantage of this really hot, and we will get classes out to teach you to be a paranormal investigator. We'll charge $299 to $399 for the course, and at the end, we'll send them out this printable certificate saying you completed it and you're a certified paranormal investigator. But unfortunately, there is no such thing. That isn't even worth the paper it's printed on because there is no such thing as paranormal training. There is no such thing as being, certified because there is no qualifications or anything that anybody's, going by. So it really kind of opened up the doors, and now, it's like now you can become a, demonologist. All you got to do is go and pay this exorbitant amount of money and the same thing. And to me, I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh, like that to me is like so scary that people are like doing this stuff and wanting to take this stuff on without really having any idea what they're doing, any idea whatsoever. And then to try to then make some money off of it, kind of just turns my stomach. My whole thing with businesses, and I get that it's another way to kind of reinvent their business, and it's hot right now. But, the problem is that in so many of these locations that there are spirits that are trapped. Mm-hmm. And, they're not, I feel like they're then, kind of like kept like caged, circus animals to go and perform when the groups come through. And, me, myself, I have a problem with that. If they, mm-hmm. if the spirits attached and they have a reason that they don't want to be there, there's no way you can cross them over. They're not leaving if they don't want to. But for so many that do, and they're stuck, and just because the owner of the location thinks, wow, this would be cool to, a new inventive way of making money, when they tell us right away that, oh, well, we want to do, we ask now when businesses want us to come in. I ask,
right.
What are you wanting to do if we are able to validate anything? And so if they mm-hmm. say that they want to, make money off of it, I just refer them out to other people because I really don't want to be part of that. But again, it has become such an explosion, and there are so many people that are interested. I think that it's great because we do need investigators and researchers in this field. We can always use, people out there trying to capture evidence. I think the only bad side of it, though, is that, it's not just people that are now enthusiasts. These people are now actually truly believing, that, they've been watching these movies for a few months. They've went out to a couple cemeteries. Now they're full-fledged, investigators, and they're, start a Facebook page, and now they're a group, a couple friends, and mm-hmm. before you know it, they're putting out that, they do free investigations for people and taking on right. private clients. Have you ever done private clients, or most of your places been just haunted locations?
Yeah, no, because I'm an enthusiast. So, I've had the only thing I've had access to. Well, no, that's part of the virtue of being a filmmaker, and whether it's documentary or reality or narrative, features, is it gets you into a lot of places. So when we were doing the documentaries in England, we got into a lot of very private locations, and that was really, really interesting. But in my downtime, when I go and do it and seek it out, it's, typically just because I'm interested in it. I hate to even use the word hobby, but that's all it is, because I'm not trained in it. And you watch all these people that go on these ghost hunts, and even the people giving the tours aren't necessarily trained in it. Sometimes they are, but for the most part, they're not. And so no, yeah, most of the places I've gone, or it's places that I didn't know were haunted, and then somebody is having an experience, or I've experienced something. But no, I've never, other than when we were making the documentaries, and even then I was just kind of filming, and I was very new to the whole thing. That's my only experience with private clients that had a problem that had to be solved. And one of the stories we did was very, very touching. It's a man who had just lost his wife, and he had a little girl, and they felt that the mother was, for lack of a better word, haunting them. They could hear her footsteps going up and down. And this was a little tiny town in England, and they didn't have much money, and it was just that house was so heavy. I remember when I was shooting crying, because it was so heavy and so dark, and his story was so heavy. And one of our psychics came in and would talk to him, and then one of our psychics took him aside, said, "This isn't for the cameras." And right. He said, my guides are telling me that you're thinking about ending your life. And this man was so shocked, and that he was called out, and that they nailed him. And then someone was sent in to clear the property. So, and then it felt much lighter, oddly enough. It's like, walked outside and it was very light, and the whole thing felt lighter, and I think it all had a happy ending. But that was a very personal, very emotional experience.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because people don't understand, I tell people all the time that, myself being having psychic abilities, a lot of people will say, oh, I was chosen by God, I'm, picked specially for whatever reason, and, I hate to disagree, but, we're all born with abilities. Some are much more in tune than others. We lose it, when we are told that, that things don't exist, different things. We'll talk ourselves out of, like when we're experiencing psychic, experiences, we'll kind of talk ourselves out of it, and say, oh, well, no, you're seeing something else, or whatever it may be. But energy is very, very powerful. And what was interesting is my team and myself, we had an investigation, a private client last night, and we went, and the majority of the people on my team do have some type of psychic ability, whether they may be an intuitive, a sensitive, an empath, have full psychic abilities. Everybody's a little bit different. And then we also have a few people who are complete, skeptics, because I like to always have like a healthy balance. And, we went, started going through, and my co-founder and I had gone through the house a few days prior when we did the client interview. And, we had everybody go in, and I said, okay, I'm not going to, tell you a whole bunch about this. I want you to go in and I want you to walk around the house, and you just tell me what rooms feel heavier, or what areas feel heavier to you than others. And I will tell you, the 5 people who walked through there, every single one of them individually picked up on every single location in that house that was heavy. And, it's funny because, again, 2 of the 5 have no abilities, or actually 3, no abilities whatsoever. But they were having personal experiences where their chest felt very heavy, hard to breathe. They were having, the hair on their arms standing straight up. They were getting, I'm not a big orb person, but we were catching actually orbs intelligently moving and kind of dive bombing and hitting one of our investigators. And at the same time that we would see it, dive bomb and hit him on the screen, on the video screen, which was, reversed from him so he couldn't see it, he would say, oh, I just, got touched right here. And we were watching it on the screen happen as he was saying it. So it was very, very interesting. And, I had said, all of a sudden I felt like everybody was having, was experiencing some stuff, and we were in one of the heaviest rooms. And I said, okay, I just want everybody to stop, and I said, I want everybody to tell me what, personal experiences you're feeling right now, because I'm picking up a lot. And right about that time, one of my investigators, started getting this, like when you're, you have a lot of pressure in your ears, and it builds up before they pop. All of a sudden, he, grabbed his ears, and he's like, oh, my gosh, and I said, okay, I want you to come out of the room, walk out of the room, walk away, tell me if you feel any different. As soon as he got out from the room, he went away. Then somebody went right back to where he was standing, and, again, felt, they were having a personal experience. And, so energy is very, very, strong, and people definitely, should pay more attention. I think that we miss a lot. And doing stuff.
Yeah, and I think part of why I'm so drawn to this is I've been told by many psychics that I have some ability, but I've just and I've just not learned how to harness it. I've been in a few situations where I've been on, with a group and doing a ghost hunt, and I remember one, I think it was in Philadelphia, and we're at this building, and we're all outside, and said, everybody kind of tune in and think, see what you're picking up and see what you're getting. And I was like the only person that said, I'm getting something from that window right up there in the corner watching us. And that turned out to be correct. That had something to do with that building and the history of the building. I also did a workshop. My wife and I did a workshop where it was, to kind of open up and to kind of hone the ability a little bit. And she had, one of her things was she had an entity that's always around her, that's someone that passed on, and I want everybody to kind of tune in. And she walked us through this meditation, and I want everyone to see if they can kind of pick up how he died. I'll say that I was the only person that actually got it right, and it surprised me, and it was unusual because I said I'm getting a car, but I'm also getting a pain in my chest, so I'm not sure what to make of that. And then she went over and she said, okay, and then went around the room and got everybody else. Oh, someone killed them. Oh, he fell off a cliff. Oh, whatever. He was in a car and he had a heart attack. And so it's like, wow, I just wish I could learn how to trust it and how to harness it, and that's part of my pursuit, and I think that's part of my interest in the genre, because I'm still a filmmaker first.
Right.
And even haunting a Cell Block 11, it's definitely made, with respect to the field, but it's also a movie. There's going to, there's orbs that start doing crazy things, and I got to entertain an audience too.
Right.
But I think you'll see with the movie, you will see that it's handled, I think, respectfully, and the team's handled respectfully, because I do respect the field.
And I think that that's an important part, because, again, with the rise of the interest in, I mean, I can remember when they, back, started so long ago, and I couldn't get anybody to go with me, much less put together a whole team,
Isn't that funny?
Investigations. And yeah, because I literally would ask people to go, because of course, sometimes I never broadcast it that I did this or anything like that. There were a small circle of people as I became an adult that did know. And, it's so funny because, somebody will know somebody who knows your friend, and it's somehow they, were at somewhere and they started talking about how there was some activity in their house, and, somebody just happened to say, oh, I know somebody who might be able to help. But I always had people, and I didn't want to go to people's homes by myself, because, again, you don't know these people, they're not
right.
personal friends. And, people were like, I'm not going to, you're crazy. They thought if I wasn't taking a big enough chance of, going to somebody's house I didn't even know by myself, if I wasn't crazy enough to doing that, but then to believe, all of this about, spirits, and there might actually be something going on, they weren't trying to have it. Now, it's geez, we've got, hundreds of thousands of investigators across the United States, and now it's worldwide. So, obviously, it is a booming, business.
And what's so interesting about that is, right when it is booming is when the networks are all saying, you know what, we really have had enough paranormal shows. Let's do something else now. I find that really just counterintuitive. And I've gone in and I've pitched recently, and it's you guys can understand how many groups there are across the United States. You've got not only a built-in audience, but you've got built-in people that are willing to do this and that love doing it. And they're like, well, our agents are telling us that nobody is buying paranormal right now. Okay, all right. I don't know what to say to that.
And it's so strange because you do see, shows that it's, and there is only a handful of them, and, I think on the major networks. But again, we're seeing the influx of people going right past the networks and going straight to the internet. I've seen, people who are creating these shows, actual teams that are going out and just taking their investigations and putting them up on YouTube.
Right.
So it is getting out, but for the small group of people, that are on TV, they have a huge following. I tell you see the numbers in, the conferences, double and sometimes triple if they just have a couple people that have, these paranormal shows there. Now, I do think that, the TV is saturated, with the paranormal field, but I think it's because they're all the same kinds of shows. I think that there's a lot of ideas to do, make a twist on it, where I think will do really, really well. And also, I think, again, that internet, the internet TV, thing is going to be the new wave of a lot of these genres of.
And I've thought about utilizing that, because as I'm told, no, and I tell you, I told you, my history with this genre goes way back before there was a John Edward, before, all of that. I had been pitching it, and everyone looked at me like I was nuts. Nobody wants to see that stuff, and they would say no, and then it started ending up on the air, and then it spawned this whole worldwide phenomenon, and now they're all saying no, because there's too much of it. And I'm starting to think, well, maybe I feel very passionate. This whole thing is a journey for me, and I feel very passionate about this new idea that I have. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just put it out. Maybe I'll just do it. Screw them, forget them. I'll just do it and put it out there, and I'll prove to them that there's an audience for this and that it's popular. However, it still takes time. It still takes money. I still have to make a living. It can't just be a hobby. It's not my number one passion. I still love making movies. That's my number one passion. But this is all definitely a big journey for me, and doing Haunting of Cell Block 11 is part of that journey. And I've got another paranormal movie that I'm actually writing right now that's part of that journey and part of my experience in Hollywood and dealing with all this stuff. And I've got this TV show that I want to do. Now, I've got other movies that I want to do that have nothing to do with paranormal. But it's definitely, boy, it's just gnawing at me. There's something I need to say with all this, and I'll figure it out one of these days before I retire.
Right, right. Well, and I definitely think you're being, led down this way, and so it is. You kind of battle because people don't understand how hard it is with networks, and that's one of the things, and maybe you've seen it, as well in the paranormal field, but it has become, so backbiting and so drama-filled in the paranormal field of everybody competing with each other, wanting to be the head honcho of investigating, and wanting to put down, everybody else. It's really becoming a really big problem. And what people don't understand is all these people want is their own shows. They want all the attention. But their chances of getting an actual paranormal show, are probably, about the same as winning the lottery. And,
I was just going to say that. I use that analogy all the time. It's like getting a show on the air is about like winning the lottery, and I've got 30 years behind me, and I still have everybody telling me no. I've worked on a ton of shows, and part of where Haunting of Cell Block 11 came from is that I've got a huge background in reality TV. And so when I first came up with this idea, it was about 4 years ago, I kept thinking, gosh, I love these shows, but man, what if they went into a location that was really haunted? And what if something really hardcore happened that was life-threatening? What would that be like? And that was the beginning of the idea. And then I was telling someone the idea. I said, look, because I have done so much reality TV, and you mentioned it earlier, people don't understand how much manipulating goes on, and you're right. We have to have the audience come back at the end of on the other side of the commercial break, and that takes manipulation, and that's what we do in reality. But that's where this idea came from. And I was talking to a friend, and he said, yeah, but I just saw a trailer for this movie called Grave Encounters, I think it was something like that, which was kind of similar, but it was a found footage movie, and I was like, oh damn. I was writing the script, and I loved this idea, and it was my background in reality. Someone just did it. But it was a found footage movie, and so I put it away for a while, and then I thought, no, I'm not done with that yet. One, I don't want to do a found footage movie. I want to do a narrative feature about this group of TV ghost hunters, and there's room for more than just one, and I'm just going to do it because I have to do this film. I couldn't get it out of my head. I just had to do this film because there is a lot to say, and there's a lot. Yeah, and there's just a lot to say about reality TV in this movie, and there's a lot to say about the paranormal groups that go out, and I think it does say a lot. And will it entertain everybody? Absolutely not. No movie does. Some people are going to think it's a big piece of garbage, but and some people have absolutely loved it and embraced it. So, but that's movie making.
Right, right. So, and again, like we were talking about with things, you have 30 years experience, not only, in reality TV, but in just all around, and you've made the connections, and, you've done the time, people know, who you are, and you even have to have a hard time to be able to, get a show put on a network. And I see people all the time that are coming out, and they're telling people, oh yes, we've got a network, and we've got a new paranormal show coming, and then people go and they submit all their stuff, and they wait forever, and it never happens, and people wonder why. And a lot of times people have ideas. They'll finally get somebody to take notice and say, okay, I think that might be a good idea. Then they have to do a pilot, and then they have to see how that even goes over. And then it depends on the network if they even like the people that are that they've chosen to be in it. And there's so many things. And we've seen many paranormal shows that have come and go in the blink of an eye. Don't even make it full season.
Right, and they probably didn't test well with the test audience, and people don't understand how difficult the business is, and all the shenanigans that goes on behind the scenes of testing shows, and then panicking because they get certain test questions back, and then they start revamping the show. And really, they should just leave it alone and let it live. And you're right. And sometimes people just aren't good TV, and people just aren't tuning in because they don't want to see them. And there's no rhyme or reason to why one show does well and why one doesn't. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of people across the country, a lot of groups, and they've got ideas for shows. And God bless them. I hope they can do it. But it is really not easy.
Yeah. I mean, every time I see somebody, on Facebook or on social media talking about how they've got the new show that's coming out, it just kind of makes you roll your eyes because you hear it so often,
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like that one, job that everybody wants, and you're competing with, hundreds of thousands of people who, just like you, want to have their own TV show and be famous.
Yes.
And, again, I think that it's taken away a lot from the field because, of course, this is supposed to be about, research and bringing forward evidence and, showing people that this stuff truly exists. It's not supposed to be about your ego becoming famous or getting,
Mm-hmm.
To be well known. But, you're in Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now I actually have one of my friends, David Oman. He owns the Oman House up in Beverly Hills, right across from where the Tate murders happened.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And now, have you ever been up to that house?
No, I have not.
Okay. Very interesting because actually next month I will be out in the LA area. I'm speaking at a conference out there, and then I'm supposed to go out and do a live investigation on my show and stuff at his home. It's very, very interesting. I mean, the film has been on like so many different, paranormal shows and been a feature and things like that. But he's got like 24-hour cameras that run in his house all the time, and he does these tours of his home, and it's pitched right on like cliff right across from where the Sharon Tate murders were, and was built with a steel cage because it was being put in the side of a hill. So it has created like some kind of vortex where they're getting. I mean, it's just like Motel 6. There's always something there, and they've got all kinds of activities. So I'm going to be out there checking out a few places. So for people, if they were going to go to the Los Angeles area, what would be your idea of like some good places that you've been to or of to investigate?
Well, I mean, the first one that comes to mind is the Roosevelt Hotel, which is, always advertised as being very haunted, and people, have claimed that they see Marilyn Monroe used to stay there, and they claim, there's a mirror that her image appears in sometimes. Mm-hmm. I actually did some shooting at the Roosevelt once in some of the haunted rooms, and took a psychic there. We didn't pick anything up, but that was the first spot that came to mind as just kind of being sort of the cliched spot. Now, sometimes you have to wonder, well, is there any substance to it, or is it just part of their shtick that they're known as being the haunted hotel? I don't know, but there have been a lot of investigations there, and there have been a lot of people that have gone there and had experiences, so I don't know. Other than that, you kind of caught me off.
Have you ever been to the Linda Vista Hospital?
Yes, I actually, when I was scouting for this movie, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a prison or hospital, or I didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
So I went there only on a location scout, just to kind of look at it. And it's a very creepy place. But now it's used a lot to shoot in.
Yeah.
And people go in there and they shoot, and they just kind of leave their stuff behind. So you'll walk through certain floors, and you'll see, rooms that are blood splattered, and it's because they don't even bother to clean it up anymore after a film crew comes in and shoots. And so that one, I don't know. It's almost like it's been so soiled by so many people that have gone through it, and I don't know if it actually is really haunted or not.
Yeah, and I know that it is completely shut down now. They don't do any tours or anything anymore in there. They're actually going to be renovating it into a home for senior citizens.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
It's a great building. It's a great building, and I'm really glad I was able to go there just to look at it for film, because it's it's kind of nice when you can just walk through with one person and just kind of feel the space and look at it, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually have a friend, a director friend out there as well, who's been in this field for a very long time, J.J. Rogers. And he actually, for I think 4 years, was actually filming out there and created a documentary called the Linda Vista Project. And he's getting ready to release that. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting stuff that comes out. I mean, there's so much, and I know that there's a cemetery out there, right, for a lot of like the celebrities.
Yeah, there's the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and they do a lot of Halloween stuff there, where you can go and you can watch movies, old horror movies, and sit among the tombstones and all, and yeah, there are some kind of interesting things. You mentioned hospitals. I actually wanted to ask you something. Get your opinion on this. There was back in '94, we had a big earthquake here in the San Fernando Valley, and a lot of buildings were destroyed. There was a hospital here in North Hollywood that was basically rendered unusable after that, but they would use it for filming, and they used to film the show Scrubs there. So it really was an old hospital, and it got used only for filming. Well, they recently, in the past few years, tore it down, and now I drive by it every single day, and it's a huge, brand-new complex of apartment buildings. And I've often wondered if the spirit energy was there when it was a hospital, if it was there, just kind of assuming that, like we were talking about earlier, that hospitals are, a place that a lot of spirit energy gets trapped.
Absolutely.
Even after it was torn down and turned into apartments, I often wonder, as I drive by, I wonder if there's people in those brand new apartments having hauntings or experiences. Yeah, I mean, it was completely razed. It was totally torn down and a completely new building put up.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things, and we look at this throughout history, where our houses are now, there were things here before, and there'll be things later. Things were built on things were torn down, towns were rebuilt, things like that. The energy still exists. So a lot of times, like when we're doing a client's residential case, we want to do, record checks on the property, how many times it's flipped over, what was, built there before, or anything that's been, torn down to back up. So it does hang around on the property. So, I mean, and there are plenty of things. In fact, there's a internment camp, a Japanese internment camp not too far from where I live. And they had actually, it was there forever. They had, the big tower and stuff where they'd have the guard and all that. And it basically was just shut down. And it was in a little small town, so, they just left it as a reminder of what was there, of history. And then, I guess about 5 or 10 years ago, they decided to, bulldoze it down, the whole thing, and build a whole brand new house subdivision on it. And we actually went and started just driving around one day asking neighbors, talking to neighbors. And there were actually quite a few neighbors that we did talk to that as well experienced a whole lot of very crazy, phenomena. And, of course, they try to convince themselves it was other stuff, but, these were brand new houses. There never, been anything else there. So, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the researcher and investigator in me that I like, because, I love just, going and talking to people. It's surprising how many people have experiences.
Yeah, I do. Oh, and I found that when I was scouting for the movie, because it's about paranormal and ghosts. So I'd be sitting at a bar somewhere and just strike up conversation about that topic, and it is amazing. It is amazing how many people have had an experience that they want to share. Because and like you said before, people used to kind of shy away from it, but it's become sort of sexy. It's become very accepted now. And people aren't afraid to talk about their haunting experiences without, before I think they were afraid they'd sound like some Looney Tune crackpot. Now they love to open up about it, and they love to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it did have to do with, TV and movies and shows, especially paranormal witness or my ghost story, where, you know, just everyday folks were coming in and telling their stories. And, I mean, that's what's made, you know, like my show so popular. Is that I really I deal with all things across the board and all kinds of people, but I really like for people to come on and tell their own personal stories, because people who are connected with the paranormal, it's usually a very personal journey. I mean, they end up helping people and doing all this stuff, but it usually stems from something that they've been experiencing growing up, and they're just kind of trying to find out answers along the way as well as everybody else. So where people would shy away and not really want to tell you, or what I would get is people would tell me their stories, but they would want to stay anonymous. Now, people are like, oh, are you going to write this? Yeah, are you going to put this on YouTube? You know, like, so people are, like, really willing to tell you all about their interesting stories, especially like we'll be out and me and my team, or I'm wearing my team logo shirt, and they're always asking us questions, you know, like, oh, you know, that's what you do, and then it seems like everybody we talk to, they have a story. And I mean, again, I think it's kind of good, because I think people, you know, it's kind of dropping that stigma a little bit that, you know, people who experience this stuff are crazy. Because if that's the case, then there's a whole hell of a lot of people that are really crazy out there. Because
there's definitely something going on, and I guess maybe for me, it's better to believe it than to not believe it, and it certainly feels better. It's just I would hate to go through just be so cynical about it, but I was recently doing some research for a different kind of movie that I want to do based on a true story, an event that happened in Missouri, and I actually found out about it through my relationship with the prison and all that. And so I went out to Missouri and I spent some time scouting some of the real. This is something that happened in the 50s, and I wanted to just see and experience and feel some of the actual locations. I just wanted to walk them, and part of that too was I visited every single grave of the people who were affected by this story, and I sat down and I had a conversation with them. And I'm sure some people would look at me and think that I was nuts, but I felt an obligation to talk to them, and they were all in very different areas. Boy, it took a lot of driving, I'll tell you. I mean, I really had to stick it out sometimes to try to find these little cemeteries out in the middle of Missouri, nowhere. And I would have to find them, and I did, and I found every single one, and I sat down, and I had a conversation and told them what my intentions were, and some of these were bad people that did the bad thing, and some of them were the victims, and I just felt very compelled to do that. And that's, you know, a project that's very, very personal and near and dear to me that I love, but it's a very big project. It's not a low-budget project, so I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it was a very interesting experience. And I took...
That's amazing. I mean,
and I also, you know, I think we all have some of the ghost hunting apps on our phones, and I would sit those down with me. Some of them, you know, just come up with words, and I got to say, I shared some of it with some ghost hunters. I said, you got to understand what some of these words that came across, because, you know, skeptics will say, oh, they're just random. It's just randomly picking out words. Right. Well, my goodness, they picked out some very specific words that I have no explanation for. And so either it was very coincidental, or there was really something to it.
Well, right, but I mean, we know that, you know, they work with, you know, it's energy, you know, they can feed off people, they can feed off electronics, things like that. I mean, it was not, you know, strange to think that, you know, we've got all this electronics equipment anywhere, you know, the EVP recorders, things like that. All of those same types of gadgets and stuff are now put inside of our phone. So a lot of these apps use those same kind of things, so it's just kind of diverted. But I think that for a lot of people, again, people don't like change. You know, it's like they just get stuck in something and they just have such a hard time. I can remember when, you know, computers first came out, and people were just like, oh my God, it's just going to be too complicated, and, you know, like, who will ever do this? And I mean, look at where we're at. And our technology is ever changing, and, you know, with, you know, more people out there investigating and trying out new things. I mean, we cannot be so naive to think that only using, you know, an audio recorder or, you know, a flashlight interaction or different things that we have right now, digital cameras, things like that, we have to think bigger than that because technology is growing, and so we're able to see things on such different, wavelengths and things like that.
Yeah.
It's changing.
Yeah, one something interesting about the movie was I needed ghost hunting gear. So when I was in pre-production, I found Bill Chappell. He runs Digital Dowsing. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Digital Dowsing builds all this equipment for ghost hunting, and he and Bill actually indents a lot of this stuff. And we've had very interesting conversations about ghost hunting and just kind of theory behind ghosts, and he's always inventing new stuff, and he's always trying to push the envelope of technology to figure out how to make it pick up on this stuff, and it's really, really interesting. So yeah, I mean, if people do want to buy stuff, please go over to Digital Dowsing, only because he was so good to me, and he makes a lot of very interesting products.
Oh, I'll have to have you introduce me and maybe have him on the show. I mean, I'm very interested, in all the new types of electronics that they're, putting out, new apps. I think that, again, some of these things can be, recreated or revamped and, used for different things. And I think that, that's going to be where we're going to, things are going to change because now, we've got the infrared, we've got all these different ways to, try to see, spirits when they're there. We can't see them.
Oh, and I tell you, some of the stuff that I've seen that Bill Chappell has come up with recently, it's mind blowing. It's really hard to even wrap your head around the fact that this could actually be working the way that it seems to be working. It's really, really amazing stuff. Because yeah, we have gone beyond the basic EVPs and EMF meters, and that's so antiquated now, really. And
right.
And he's always now pushing the envelope and see how we can really look deeper into this fabric that we all walk in.
Yeah, well, I can remember, EVPs, and they were so grainy, and there wasn't all this high-tech software and stuff that you could run it through to take out background noise and, enhance it and all these things. And, just in, through the last 10, 15 years, things have just jumped so much. There's so many different types of equipment and so many different experiments that people are using. And again, this is, as a scientific community, because we're out there just, coming up with ideas, coming up with equipment, because we're in the field and we're saying, okay, this doesn't work really good, but it's a good idea. We could take this part of it, and if we could just, integrate this part of another equipment, and that's what, people like your friend are doing. And it's becoming actually a very, very popular business. And I will tell you that the conventions that I speak at, the busiest tables that I've seen have been companies that are creating the newest and most technological equipment out there, for investigators. And in fact, one of my investigators bought I can't even remember what it is. It's like the box that does like AVPs and all the different meters and everything, and it's actually on back order, and it's been on back order for like a month already. So many people pre-ordered it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's definitely a good way to go. Well, I know that, you have a young baby and a wife that are waiting for you. Normally we have a 2-hour show, but we agreed to cut it a little short tonight for you because...
No, I appreciate it. They're waiting. Yeah, they're waiting for me for dinner, so I do appreciate that. But boy, it's been just a pleasure talking to you, and such a fascinating conversation that, we don't get to have these conversations with everybody. So I do appreciate the time.
Absolutely. You're welcome to come back, anytime to promote anything that, you're doing. I'd absolutely love to, keep in contact with you after this and, maybe when I'm out in Los Angeles, get together with you and your wife or you and, talk about the stuff that you're doing. For the people that are listening, where can they find you or also the show if they want to rent it or if they need to get in contact with you?
Yeah, the best thing is, we have the website, hauntingofcellblock11.com. It's 11, the number 11, hauntingofcellblock11.com. That has all the places to rent or buy the movie currently. Please, all your listeners, we're an independent film. We don't have the big, giant marketing budgets. We need people's support. We need them to go and just rent it and tell their friends to rent it. Because, it's difficult. It's very difficult to make indie films and to distribute them, and people don't understand how the money flow works. That the filmmaker is always the last person to actually get the money. So we really do appreciate your support and everybody else's support. So, yeah, hauntingofcellblock11.com. We're also on Facebook under the original title, which was Apparitional, but you can still search Facebook, hauntingofcellblock11.com, and that'll come up. Yeah, and that's it. And, yeah, again, my name's Andrew P. Jones, and I'm the director, writer, producer. And, yeah, I really appreciate the time today.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on and, connecting with me and, to talk about this. So we'll definitely be in contact. Go enjoy your family. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll definitely put those links out. I'm going to ask all of our listeners to, share this link, get this video out. Let's get him some, views on the video. $4.99. I mean, you can't beat that. Check it out, and then I'm going to make a thread. So I want people to, stay in contact with me and let me know what they thought of the movie, and maybe we'll bring them back and see what we can talk to them about again next time. So,
yeah, that'd be great. Oh,
thank
you. We're also on Twitter at Cellblock11 if people want to follow us.
Perfect. Okay, I will also. I think that's actually on the website, so we'll put that. We'll add that link.
All right. Thank you.
All right. You have a great night.
You too.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. All right, everybody. Well, again, I absolutely love this build, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. I mean, there's going to be people that are just like Andrew that are going to fight to make good movies and good entertainment that represent the field that we all participate in, but also a reality background where he's really got some great ideas of upcoming things to do. And I've told this, and I'm going to put this on the air. I absolutely see him very, very successful in the paranormal shows, but I feel that they're going to be internet-based. But again, the audience on the internet is growing like wildfire. I mean, it's growing faster than the Ebola, virus. It's like I look at it all the time, and for there to be so many radio shows, and people can pay to have their own radio show now, and produce it themselves. You're competing with a much bigger market. But I will tell you, in the paranormal, if you can put together some good, stuff, there are a lot of people out there that are really wanting to see that. They want to see actual investigators out investigating these locations. I see it happening. I see it happening soon. So, we're going to keep an eye on this topic, and we're going to mark this special show where I, predicted this, and we'll see it. And if it comes to be, as it usually does, then we'll bring him back on, and we'll play this clip. But I want to say thank you. I have some of the most amazing chat room listeners. They are there, loyally every single show for all 3 shows, and great conversation in there, great people, great topics. Make sure to come and check us out in the chat room for our next shows next time. Make sure to go to GTMWickedRadioNetwork.com and give us a like on Facebook. Also check out Paranormal Connections. Give me a like. And if you have any topics or questions, make sure to PM me or post them on the wall, and I'll make sure to check them out and get back to you. I do the radio for you. I want to bring the topics and the stories that you guys want to hear, and along with sharing your own personal stories. So everybody make sure to check us out next week, and I'm going to have Carol Malone, and we're going to be actually talking some stuff, because she's actually working with a group, and I'm going to kind of keep it under wraps right now until I put the promos out. But does exactly what we were just talking with Andrew about, it, the paranormal equipment. So we're going to have, you've got some, questions for the techie guys. This will be the show next week to do it. We'll have you call in with your questions, and we're also going to be discussing a few of the upcoming events that I will be at. So if you're in the area, you want to get your tickets, you want to come and check it out, we also have a Paranormal Connection radio show table up, and you can come and be interviewed on the show directly from the conference live. So, all right, everybody, that's the end of the show tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining in. You guys are amazing. All of the listeners that come every week, I couldn't do it without you. So all of my love and gracious intent goes out to all of you. So have an amazing night. Good night, everybody.